And joining us now on the Medi-Share guest line, broadcaster, play-by-play guy, Matt Schumacker. Matt, so great to have you on Unpacking It today. How are you?
Man, I'm good. Thanks a lot for having me on, Bryce. Excited to chat with you. And I got no complaints, man. The sun's shining. It's the middle of college basketball season. You got the NFL playoffs going too. So, for a sports junkie like me, it's a fun time of year.
It's the best. Now, you're in Indianapolis, so does that mean you're a Colts fan? And can you claim the Colts after that debacle against Jacksonville?
Oh man, don't kick a man when he's down, Bryce.
I root for the Colts. I'm a Panthers fan first, but the Colts are my second favorite team.
You know what? I grew up in St. Louis, so I'm a St. Louis Rams fan at heart. Of course, there are
Wow.
no St. Louis Rams anymore, so I don't really have a team per se. But I married into a family who's from Indy, and they have imparted their Colts fandom on me. So I was definitely rooting for the Colts the other day against the Jags, and man, there was a lot of disappointment in Indianapolis when they didn't get it done, as you might imagine.
So what's the talk there? People still believe in Frank Reich. It doesn't seem like Wentz. It's like, what do you do now with him? We're kind of locked in a little bit.
You know what? I was talking to a friend of mine today. We got lunch together, and he's been a Colts fan his whole life, and we both feel that Carson has gotten a lot of undeserved criticism.
Mm,
Now, I think part of that is the fact that he's the quarterback, and the quarterback always gets more credit than he deserves, probably, and more blame than he deserves when things aren't going right. I love Carson Wentz, and I think if you look at his numbers, he's top 15 in the league with
yeah,
some of his numbers this year. So I think it's unfair to put it all on him. Obviously, I'm sure he probably feels like there were some mistakes that he made throughout the course of the season, but I like Wentz. And when we were talking about, okay, if it's not Wentz, who are you
yeah.
going to get if you're the Colts? Man, Wentz is a heck of a lot better than a lot of other options.
That's right. And then you start over again because last year was it was Jacoby, and then it was Philip Rivers, and then now it's Wentz. I mean, that's hard. That's why they haven't really been able to get that momentum going because the
I
talent's
agree.
there on the roster.
I agree, Bryce. That's a great point. I think a lot of people might overlook that with the Colts because, like, if you go all the way back to Luck
Yeah,
retiring, it's been one or two seasons with one quarterback, then switch to the next, then to the next. No rapport. And even this year with Wentz, he didn't even have a full off season because he was coming off that, I think it was a foot surgery.
yeah,
Um, so I would like to see them give him another year, just as
yeah.
a casual fan of the team and as a fan of Carson Wentz. Give him a healthy year. Maybe put a few more pieces around him in the draft or in free agency and see if because they were so close this year. That's what's
Uh,
so excruciating. Like 2 weeks left in the season. I think they had a 98% chance of making the playoffs. So man, I
yeah,
would love
that
to
was
see
tough.
them stick with this roster next year.
That's right. That's right. Get healthy, run it back, and still ride Jonathan Taylor because he's a stud for sure.
What do people
Well,
think about? Sorry to cut you off. You got
yeah,
me on an NFL tangent now. What do people think about the Panthers?
it's very doom and gloom. There's very
Okay.
little optimism, very little belief in Matt Rule.
Yeah,
My thought is you committed 6 years to him. You asked him to rebuild, so you got to give him 3 years.
I'm with
So
you. Yeah.
to me, it's like whether he's going to do it, and even if you believe that, it's like otherwise you're starting over again. So let's see it play out, and then at that point, you say, "Hey, we gave you 3 years, we gave you multiple quarterbacks, and it still didn't work." Or, all right, great, year three, it clicked, finally it happened. But the same thing, like you said, where do you go to find a quarterback? That's
Right.
that's the issue. And this year it was crazy in the NFL that there really weren't that many great quarterbacks. Like we're seeing them in the playoffs, but outside of that, all these other franchises are going, he's okay, he's better than this guy, but so we're in that boat. Sam Darnold is definitely not the answer. So
Yeah, I also think just the league just keeps getting better. Like you look at the records of these teams in the playoffs. Nobody was even close to going undefeated this year.
true.
And I think the parity in the league is part of what makes the NFL so entertaining to watch every single weekend,
Yep.
including like the last weekend of the year where everyone probably thought, okay, Colts are going to roll through the Jags. They have nothing to play for. Not so fast.
That's right. It was awesome. So we still got the playoffs going on, and then we'll talk college basketball with you because you've got your pulse on that sport and have an opportunity to call play by play for a bunch of games and a couple months away from March Madness. Excited for that, of course. And so, but I want to kind of share your story with our listeners and kind of we'll weave them together, your career so far as a play-by-play guy and how your faith in Jesus intersects with that and how throughout your journey God has shown up and revealed himself to you and opened up doors for you and that kind of thing. But I think for people listening may not realize, okay, Matt's a young guy and he's already doing national play-by-play. And so that's a big deal. And I studied broadcasting in college. And so I have a great respect for it. So take us in. How did this begin? And what was your first kind of big opportunity that sent you down this path of play-by-play?
Yeah. Gosh, my journey is winding, as with most.
That's right.
Most guys in sports, broadcasting of any kind, whether it's a sideline reporter or play-by-play or radio, whatever. Um, First thing I want to say before I jump back to your question is that this year has been God, straight up.
Mm,
Like I had a contract with ESPN before COVID. It was not full time, but that was kind of my first big break. So I
mm.
guess I'm answering your question in part here. That was my first big break with ESPN, just as a part-time contract, doing college basketball and softball. It was amazing. Um, I was just like giddy every time I got to do a game with them. As a kid growing up watching SportsCenter 3 times a day, working for ESPN was a dream, so I got to do it. Awesome. COVID happens, contract expires, doesn't get renewed. My wife gets pregnant,
Oh man.
and I'm like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta go do this thing and put my big boy pants on and get a real job. So I studied to get my real estate license. Did that for the last year and some change, and then this fall, it was about late September, early October, and I really hadn't heard much about college basketball from any of my previous bosses at the various networks that I had freelanced for over the years. And I was like, I don't know if this is where God wants me to be anymore.
Mm.
So my wife and I, Bryce, I'm not kidding, I'm not making this up. My wife and I prayed for a week straight. God, if you want me in a different space in life, make it known. Close
Mm.
every door so that I know it's time for me to move on. And sure enough, the very next week, 5 games in my inbox from Fox. And then just from there, it just kept going
Wow.
and going and going. And I'm like, okay, like if that isn't God telling me where I'm supposed to be, I don't know what is. So
Wow.
yeah, man, it's I got chills right now just thinking about it because that week changed my life.
Mhm. That's incredible. I
Yeah.
love it. Well, let's go back to becoming a dad. So
Okay.
how is that your baby's been born at this point?
Yeah, she's 9 months old. Her
Ah, that's
name her
awesome.
name's Bella,
Oh, I like
and
that.
yeah, it's funny. We everybody's got like I think talking to my friends and stuff. Everybody's got like their plan for when they're going to start having kids, and it almost never goes to plan. But this didn't go to plan, and it ended up being the best thing ever.
Oh,
It definitely wasn't our plan to get pregnant when Dad was without a job and we're in the middle of a pandemic. But God knows best, and yeah, it's been really fun. And now Bella's to the age where if I'm gone, Molly, my wife, will turn on the game, and Bella will hear my voice on TV, and she gets it now a little bit. She started looking around and smiling. So yeah, man, it's fun being a dad.
it's the best. I have 2 daughters, 2 years and then 5 months. So I'm uh
Okay,
I'm right there with you as a
yes,
girl dad.
you
So
are, and you're right there with me with the under 1 years old, man. That's a trip.
Very challenging. It's You're still trying to get the nap schedule, sleep schedule down. It's just
Me
a
too.
daily battle for sure. Well, all right, so let's go back a little bit further then. So you went to Butler for college, and
Yeah.
so at what point did you know that you wanted to pursue broadcasting and even specifically wanting to go after being a play-by-play guy?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always known that I wanted to be in sports media in some way. I mean, first I wanted to be a pro, which was quickly, you know, cut.
What
And
sport? What sport were you hoping?
at first it was the NFL, then it was the NBA. I legitimately thought I was going to be in the NBA until I was
Yeah.
about a sophomore in high school, 5'7", 115 pounds, and got cut a sophomore year. So then I started running track, and I ran track at Butler. Was not very good. Thought that I could maybe make the Olympics delusionally,
Wow.
and yeah, I mean I was out of my mind. I didn't know what I was thinking. So anyway, but before all that, like I said earlier, I loved watching Sports Center. Stuart Scott and Scott Van Pelt. I could watch them all day, every day. Rest in peace, Stuart Scott. So anyway, when I went to Butler,
Legend.
I actually wanted to be a Sports Center anchor, and so I got involved with the student TV station. It wasn't very big at the time. Now Butler's really grown with their sports media. It's really cool to see what's going on there. But I was anchoring a show here or there once a month or whatever. And then second semester senior year, I got to call a women's basketball game for the butlersports.com. And I thought to myself, "Whoa, I like this play-by-play thing." And so that kind of started my interest in pursuing that. Graduated college, didn't have a job. Mom and dad welcomed me back in home in
I
St.
know that
Louis.
game.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Most most broadcasters know that. I was calling high school games for $30 a pop. I was calling Wash U, St. Louis, Division III football, basketball, baseball for a guy named Chris Mitchell. Shout out to you, Chris, for giving me a chance. And then my first big break, I would say, Bryce, was rookie level minor league baseball for the St. Louis Cardinals the summer after I graduated. So it took me a year to get
Mm.
into minor league baseball, and then that kind of just started it.
And at what point did you start kind of recognizing, okay, I can do this for a career? And then we already heard about the pivotal moment of, wait, is this what God wants me to continue to do? So what was that kind of roller coaster ride like over the last 10 plus years?
Well, if I'm being honest, I've had those conversations with God at least once a year since I
There you go.
graduated college.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there would be nights not that long ago, 3, 4 years ago, where I was driving 4 hours in one direction, call a game, drive 4 hours back for $200. Now, I was single and I could afford to really stretch a dollar. Now that I'm married and have a child, that changes things. But to answer your question, when did I start to think that it could be a career for me? I mean, I don't know. I guess I always had that belief a little bit
Mm.
that I could do it. I just didn't know. I had dreams of getting to the network level, but I always knew that okay, if I can keep working my way up the minor league baseball ranks, like there's going to be a place for me in this industry. It's just to what end.
Mm.
And man, I'm so grateful for the amount of people that have helped me along the way. It's at least 25 that have helped me in some significant way or another, whether it's making a connection for me to someone at a network or letting me stay at their place multiple times throughout the year for free, feeding me.
Man.
I mean, I lived with a host family in 2017 calling minor league baseball because the team didn't pay, but they put me up with somebody. That was their form of payment. So that family, Dale and Carol, can't remember their last names at the moment, but they took me in with another player who was, you know, stretching a dollar. And
Wow.
it's people like that, man. Like I would not be anywhere close to calling games that I'm calling right now if it wasn't for all those different types of people that help me. So yeah.
God, that's cool, man. Well, yeah, and so as far as guys that you mentioned, Stuart Scott and Scott Van Pelt, other play-by-play guys, because oftentimes, we hear these play-by-play guys, we criticize these play-by-play guys as fans, but we don't always hear maybe the journey of what it takes and the minor league you know, uh, games you got to call and driving, like you said, for a $200 type of thing. And so we lose sight of that. So that's why I was excited to have you on and to hear you at this stage of the journey,
Mm.
which is cool. But as far as some of those guys that have made it and that have the longevity and have been doing it for so long, the Jim Nances of the world, who have you really listened, and analyzed and looked up to over the years?
Good question, and it's a lot, honestly. Like, love Jim Nance. I especially enjoy his March Madness.
Oh,
You
interesting.
know, yeah, I really, really like him on March Madness.
Why do you say that? Because I think of the 3 sports he does, that's his not that
Interesting.
it's his worst, but it's his least best.
Yeah, right. For a
Golf
guy
is his
who's like
best.
top
He's
five.
best he's best at golf to me. Like that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, yeah. I mean, he's got sultry tones, and
yeah,
he just does it so well. I mean, he's a pro's pro. I
yeah.
don't know what it is about his basketball. I just love. I think number one, he's kind of a minimalist, which
Mm,
I really appreciate at that point in the season where,
yes,
look, we know who the big teams are. We've been following them all year long. He gives us the necessary nuts and bolts and then really tees up what is usually his analyst crew of Grant Hill and Bill Raftery.
yep,
And those three together, I think, are just money. So I think he does a really good job of letting it breathe, hammering the big moments. I mean, he crushes the big moments, and then bringing in
yes.
his analysts, who I love. I mean, Raph on one side and Grant Hill on the other,
Oh,
with Jim
tremendous.
Nance in the middle. It doesn't get any better than that.
I agree. I do I absolutely, because I'm a Duke fan, so Grant Hill was one of my favorites growing up. So,
Okay, okay.
yeah, love listening to him. All right, so Jim you love Jim Nance. Who are some of the other play-by-play
I
guys?
really like Joe Buck, and he's a guy that takes a lot of heat, and I don't get it. But it's such a subjective business. I mean, you know
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah,
one guy could say they love you, and another guy says, "Oh, Bryce doesn't know what he's talking about."
that's right, that's right.
Everybody's got an opinion, but I really like Joe. Love him on the World Series.
Mm,
Um, let's see. Mike Breen, I think, does a heck of a job with the NBA.
yep.
And then I guess, some guys like mentors of mine, like Brandon Gaudin.
Mm.
He does some NFL on Fox. He does tons of college basketball, and he's the voice of Madden. And he's a Butler Bulldog. So
Ah, there you go. There
yeah,
you go.
there's a little personal connection there for me, and he's been really helpful to me in my career. And then I'm giving you a laundry list of people. I can't pick just one. Uh, I got to give a shout out to Lisa Byington because Lisa, in the last 2 or 3 years, has been instrumental in my growth, not only personally, but as far as career opportunities go. And now she is the play-by-play for the Milwaukee Bucks. She
Mm.
was the first woman last year in history to call the NCAA tournament on television. Um, Supreme talent and an even better person. So, and I can say the same for Buck. He's from St. Louis. We have mutual friends, and he's been a mentor to me as well, and just a,
Oh, cool.
a, a really good guy.
Oh, that's great to hear. No, those are all awesome people, and, yeah, that's neat. So, 2 guys that we've had on the show that we're big fans of, Dave Pasch and Brian Anderson. So both
Both
those
phenomenal.
yeah, those
See, this
guys
is
are
the problem you put me in, Bryce. Everybody is so good at that level.
at that level. There's no question. Then it comes down to preference. Yeah, just kinda, what style do you like a little bit more maybe than someone else?
Yeah.
Somebody who's really on the rise who does a great job is Ian Eagle. I think he's been
Oh yeah.
underrated for a little while. He's finally getting his due. And now his son's doing it. He did the Nickelodeon game the other day. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
but he's another name out there. So all right, well, cool. No, good stuff. And so I want to ask you a little bit more about Butler in a little bit as well. But as far as your faith journey goes, what have been some of the pivotal moments in your faith journey, and you can kind of go back as far as you want, as far as when you began following Jesus. But what comes to mind when you think of the pivotal moments in your life?
Yeah. Well, growing up, we went to church, um, and my mom and dad tried hard to make sure that we were, growing up in the faith, so to speak. We both, my brothers and I, we all went to Catholic high schools in St. Louis, so we were learning theology daily. But to be honest with you, that never really stirred me in a way that changed my life. I kind of looked at it almost as like another subject in school that I just needed to get a good grade in and keep moving. And then I went to college and totally went away from any semblance of living a life of Christ. And it wasn't until I guess it would have been fall of 2015. I had just finished my first minor league baseball job, dream job, calling games for the rookie affiliate of my hometown team, you know, called 65 games that summer, was living in the mountains in Tennessee. And I say all that because I was living what I considered my dream as a,
Mm,
young 20s single male who loved sports, but there was something missing.
mm,
And I could feel that uh, really intensely as the
mm,
season came to a close. And it just so happens, you know, as as God works, that a friend of mine was also going to be back in St. Louis the same time that I was going to be back before I was moving on to Indianapolis. And he was like, let's go get dinner, let's hang out, whatever. So we hang out, and I'm kind of telling him a little bit about my life, and I'm feeling kind of anxious about this and that, and he just starts asking me questions, Bryce, that nobody had ever asked me before. Like, do you believe in Jesus? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I believe in God. And he's like, no, do you believe in Jesus?
mm,
And I'm like, yeah, what's the difference?
mm,
And he's like, okay, what does it mean to you that Christ died on the cross? And I'm like, I
mm.
don't know. I'm 23 years old, and I grew up Catholic and was baptized and all that jazz. And I had no idea how to answer that question.
Wow.
That night changed my life. Aaron
Those are
Peliquin.
close.
Aaron Peliquin is my buddy who led me to Christ, basically. And he gave me a book by John Piper called "Don't Waste Your Life."
Yeah, I've read it.
And boy, that was like drinking from the fire hose for somebody that didn't, hadn't spent any time in church the last 5 years. And I was like, whoa, you know, whoa.
Man.
So I finished that book and I said, where do I go from here, Aaron? He said, read the book of John. And I'm like, okay. So I read the book of John. That was transformative in and of itself. And honestly, each year it's grown more and more. I'm really not that far into my faith walk.
Yeah.
Probably 5, 6 years, 7 years, I guess. Meeting my wife was life changing. We
Mm,
met at a small group in Indianapolis, and she inspires the heck out of me every day with how committed she is to her faith.
mm.
So that has, being with her has taken me to another level as far as my relationship with God. So, if I had to point to one thing, I would say it's that conversation with Aaron
Yeah.
Peliquin, you know, and then just little things along the way.
Man, oh, I love hearing that. That's so encouraging, and
Yeah.
just to think the importance that we have as friends to ask those questions, and hear your buddy, stepped out in faith and confidently, asked you and changed your life, put
Yeah.
you on that path. Ultimately, the Holy Spirit did, but your buddy, being obedient. That's cool, man. That's great for us to hear today, and to be able to think about those friends in our own lives. Maybe it's time to have that conversation. And,
Mm,
and you were ripe, and you were
yeah.
ready to hear it too. And we have to have discernment as followers of Jesus to know, all right, yeah, this is time to bring it up. This I gotta
Yeah.
act. So that's good. That's cool.
Yeah. Man, I so appreciate his courage too. I mean, there's
Yes.
been moments where I could have brought it up to somebody and didn't because I felt
Mm,
awkward about it or whatever.
yep.
And, I just think Yeah. Obviously, it's ultimately the Holy Spirit that's moving and leading us to Christ, and it's Christ that saves us.
That's right.
But He uses people or situations or whatever in our lives to make it known, and that was that for me.
Amen. Oh, that's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
man, I love hearing that story, and yeah, it's really fun to have you on the show because you are early in your career and early in your faith, and so now we'll be following you and keeping up with you. So glad to have you in the
Yeah,
mix
man. I'm glad to be here.
and hearing about it for sure. Well, you mentioned going to school at Butler, and I think you were there at least for one of the championship runs, or were you there for both?
Just one. Good
Just
homework.
one.
Yeah.
Okay. So take me in. So I was a Duke fan, but I must say I don't like to admit this too often, but when Gordon Hayward threw up the
Mm.
over half court shot, as a sports fan, I wanted to see that ball go in. As a Duke fan, I was glad to be a champion. It was great. It was fun. But what a special moment in sports history, March Madness history, and what we almost witnessed, but still an epic finish. But anyway, the back-to-back run for Butler, I feel like is somewhat underrated on
Mhm.
what was accomplished, and so you can speak on it better than I can. But what was that like being there?
Well, I was a senior in high school when Gordon Hayward took that shot, and I knew at that time that I was going to go to Butler. In
Very cool.
fact, I had visited a couple of weeks earlier um, and met with the track coach, and he kind of walked me around. And at that point, Butler I think was in the Elite Eight or something, and campus was crawling with ESPN, CBS, Fox, everybody and their brother was there. And the college all stars were practicing in Hinkle Fieldhouse. So now looking back on with hindsight of a 30-year-old, I'm like, I know what that coach was doing. He was buttering me up. But uh, yeah, man, that was incredible. And then of course going to Butler as a freshman, Gordon Hayward leaves and goes to the NBA, and the team's still intact, but nobody thought we were gonna make the national championship game again. And I gotta say, that is one of the most fun time periods in my life as a freshman.
Oh,
Um, I actually had redshirted that year due to injuries. And so some of my friends and I who were also redshirted hopped in a car, two-door sports car, and drove 17 hours to Houston for the Final Four. And Bryce,
love it.
God loves student tickets. $15 for the Final Four and the national championship.
No.
Yes.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible. I never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah. So $15 I got to watch the Final Four and the national championship.
Ah,
And we stayed in some horrible motel off the side of the highway
got
and
to.
and ate Subway 3 times a day until our stomachs hurt. But man, it was a good time. Those teams, I agree. That is such an underrated. I think even now in Indianapolis, uh, people don't talk about it enough. There's like an
Yeah.
expectation now that Butler should be that every year. Maybe not like a national champion every year, but like to do what they did with the limited resources that Butler has, as a
Yes.
smaller Division One school, beating all these Power Five teams on the way to the national championship game. It's amazing.
It really is, and it's hard enough to go back to back just to make it to the Final Four, let alone the championship, and to be competitive in both those games. I can't
Yeah,
remember who won the second one? Who was it?
UConn.
UConn. Yeah, UConn.
Yeah,
That's right.
UConn.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like UConn as a Duke fan either. That's why I guess I blocked it out. I blocked that one out. That's right.
that was the year that Kemba Walker led them through
Right.
Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament.
That's right. Okay,
Yeah,
wow. So that was
that was
yeah, okay,
spring of
okay. Yeah.
2011.
I'm taking yeah, I was right out of college at that point. Yeah, so those I mean, but those teams for Butler just incredible, and I think I think about this with the Buffalo Bills. The fact they went to 4 Super Bowls in a row, even though they lost, that doesn't to me that like takes a little bit away, but you have to look at the bigger picture and what they did to get
Yeah,
there. Same thing with Butler to do that, and especially like you mentioned, just the size of the school, resources, and the
Oh,
expectations at that time.
it changed everything for that school.
Yeah.
I mean, everything.
Yeah.
You know, without those runs, Butler's probably not in the Big East. Um, you know,
Yeah.
without those runs, they don't continue to recruit such highly talented players at such a small school. You know, and then not to mention like the uptick in applications. I mean,
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
it was crazy, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and more things are being built on campus. Yeah, pretty cool.
That is. I went to Appalachian State, so we beat Michigan and
Ooh,
experienced a similar, overnight rise type of thing. So
I'm
that
a
was fun.
big fan of Boone, North Carolina.
Oh, have you been?
Yeah, when I
Oh,
was
wow.
living in Johnson City, Tennessee,
Yeah,
it was
very
like
close.
35 minutes from Boone. I went up
Yep.
there a couple times. Good spot.
Great spot. Yeah, love skiing, and yeah, I had a great time in college. We won 3 national championships, FCS level during that time, so it was a lot of fun. All right, last thing, we could talk all day, so we'll have you on again and get into some other stuff. I saw that you've called multiple games with Dickie Simpkins,
Yeah.
former Chicago Bull, and maybe only diehard NBA fans like myself maybe remember Dickie Simpkins. But how fun has that been to call games with him? And is there maybe a bull story that you can share, or something that a takeaway that he's shared with you that you can tell our listeners about the Bulls?
First of all, Dickie's the man. Supremely good human being, man of faith,
Oh, cool.
loves the youth. Like he's big in the youth basketball scene down in Chattanooga, which is where he lives.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, I started calling games with Dickie like 3 years ago. You know, and it started off as just like, okay, you know, Matt, here's a couple of games that we have. We'd like to get you on. Your partner's Dickie Simpkins, whatever. And he and I have just developed a friendship over the years because we've gotten to work together so much. He's just so fun to work
Oh,
with.
that's cool.
He adds a lot of flavor to the broadcast. Has a good time with it. As far as stories about his playing days, I don't have a Bulls story, but I have a Kobe Bryant story.
Oh, all right. Well,
He,
you see Kobe on the wall.
yeah, so Dickie was in training camp with the Lakers right after he three-peated with the Bulls, and I'm not sure how long after, as far as
Yeah.
years. But he was in training camp for a couple weeks, and he said when he got there, Kobe, all he wanted to talk to Dickie about was MJ.
Mm.
What did MJ do in this situation? What did MJ do when he left the arena? What was MJ's pregame routine? What did he eat before the games? What was he like around this and that? He wanted to know everything about Michael Jordan, is what Dickie said, and it was funny because at the time Kobe Bryant's like this 21, 22-year-old kid
Early.
who's just trying to soak it all in. And I thought that story really exemplified A, how much respect Kobe had for Michael,
Yep.
and B, how badly he wanted to be great,
Mm.
and take from the best player of all time, Michael Jordan.
Gosh, that's
Yeah,
cool. That's
yeah.
great. And I feel like Kobe did that with whoever he could that knew Jordan or was a teammate. Now, that would be fascinating to hear the different perspectives on the players that saw Jordan and how they answered those questions. That'd be a fascinating
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
But anyway, no, that's a great story. So that's fun. You get to call games with him for sure. Well, Matt, gosh, it's been real encouraging to talk with you, and excited to have you on the show today. And we'll be listening for you, watching for you. Fox Sports, Big Ten Network, also WNBA with the
Yeah.
Chicago Sky. And so man, keep up the great work, and you're just getting going. Can't wait to see what God does in your life and does throughout your career as well. So thanks for
Amen.
being a part of unpacking it.
Well, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for reaching out. I can't believe we've been on for 35 minutes already. It went by like that. So, yeah, I'm going to be following along with your podcast too, and keep up the great work you're doing, because I think this is such a cool idea and it's needed. So, thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. There's Matt Schumacher joining us here on Unpacking It on the Medi-Share guest line.